Okay, well, let's get started then. So today we'll do more on the holidays. We've gotten through Thanksgiving and we chatted about that a little bit. So now we're into the rest of the holidays. We're in the midst of Hanukkah, started Sunday. And of course, we have Christmas and New Year's and coming up. And that's kind of what we all get into, sort of, I think, can get into a little bit of a frenzy. So the first thing that I like to say is just to remind ourselves about how powerful a pause can be, to just simply stop, and this is something that we can do throughout the holiday season, to just really stop and take some kind of mindful pause. I have a couple of suggestions, but any way that we can stop the kind of that holiday frenzy, all the to-dos that we have to do, the work and the family and the shopping and the planning and all that can get a little bit overwhelming. So just simple little pauses can really make a difference. In this particular pause, I've recommended one of the podcasts before. It's from Meditative Story, which is a really nice podcast. And so this is a little bit from there. And what he suggests is just taking a moment right now and tune inside and see what arises when you start to think about the holidays. It could be warmth, could have some tension, there may be some ambivalence, there's still some uncertainty. So just kind of noticing whatever comes up for you when we think about the holidays, and just whatever it may be, name it. If you can name either whether it's a thought that's going on about it, or a stressor, or an emotion, just name it, sit with it for a moment. And even if it's multiple things, which it often is, thoughts and emotions and just a swirl of different mental activity, just being aware of that. And notice maybe how we relate to it. Part of that might be, are we saying to ourselves, I'm uncomfortable a certain way, or I'm not looking forward to it, or I'm dreading something, whatever it might be. Maybe it's something positive. Maybe we are feeling good about it. But since there is an uncertainty, just noticing also how we relate to it, what our attitude towards all those things are. And we try to do this in a non-judgmental way. And then once doing that, we take a few moments to just breathe. To breathe and be aware of the breath as it enters and exits the body, allowing the breath to relax ourselves, allowing the breath to put us in touch with the present moment. So just breathing for a few moments. And what often happens when we just breathe is our minds get active again, and some of those other thoughts and mental activity may arise, and that's fine. When noticing that, we just simply try to return to the breath. And it's a great way to kind of maintain our focus on the present moment rather than get caught up. So coming back to the breath every time that happens. And then when you're ready, if you have your eyes closed, feel free to open them. And that's just kind of a quick pause. I stretched it out a little bit. It actually could be even briefer. Just simply pausing, noticing what's present, how you feel, what thoughts are here, what's going on in the body, breathing a bit, and then moving on. And that can sort of interrupt the stress cycle. So that's one way to kind of do that as we approach, the rest of the December and the holidays. We talked about this last time, the myths of the holidays, and just kind of looking at these photos, we see that there's lots of expectations that that the media really throws at us and that our culture throws at us. And we have to be aware of those expectations, I think, in a mindful way, to not get overly set up for disappointment, because often what the reality is not what not what those beautiful photos show. We kind of list some of them here, but there's so many things that come across in songs and commercials and shows and et cetera about all the ways that we are kind of in a way told that the way the holidays are supposed to be. And I think that's the first step, is throwing those out, being aware of our own expectations. But there are many myths and expectations that come up, and these are some of them: that we should be joyous and happy. Family gatherings should always be full of love and harmony. Romance abounds. Children are always angelic and appreciative. And gift giving is a pleasant experience, and it can be. I'm not saying these things do not happen, but the danger is that when we kind of think that they really should happen, and when they don't happen the way we expect them to, then we get the disappointment, or some of the negative emotions can arise. So that's one thing to kind of be aware of. Looking at those expectations, coming back to just reality, the best thing that we can do is just stay in the present moment. And so the next slide talks a little bit about, we didn't cover this last week. This talks about some of the more difficult things that can come up from perhaps some of the losses that we've suffered in the past. The pandemic has certainly given us many, many losses, and some of us have suffered some losses of family members. And so when we approach the holidays, that really amplifies those grief and bereavement feelings. And I put this particular graphic up here. It's centered around the pandemic. If you look at the different, the anger, for example, you're making me stay at home, and bargaining. So if I stick to the rules and stay at home, then things can go back to normal. So these go through as if we're still, we're going through the pandemic, and that's fine, but we can apply these also to how we feel about the holidays. And we go through all these stages, especially if losses begin to arise in our minds and our hearts. And what I like, again, about this particular graphic, we've always heard that there's 5 stages of grief. Well, there's a new book out I think it's called The 6 Stages of Grief. And the 6th stage is meaning, trying to find some meaning out of it. And it really kind of stems out of the idea that we can learn from these difficult experiences. We can learn from the pandemic. We can learn from the difficulties of the holidays. If we open up to that, and that's not easy, when we get caught up in some of these stages. So, and especially if there is some loneliness involved. And so, again, from the podcast Meditative Story, he did a nice thing on this prior to Thanksgiving, but it also relates to the holidays. And, not everyone has a large, welcoming, close family, or there's people missing, and we have feelings of grief and loss. And loneliness can, be difficult, of course, in a number of ways. And what he suggests is using a mindfulness technique to try to deal with this, and that's the technique called RAIN. And RAIN is here on this graphic. RAIN is a very simple but helpful technique for, and it's an acronym, for first recognizing what's happening. And it goes right along with other mindfulness techniques to recognize what's happening in the moment by simply beginning to ask yourself, what's happening inside me now? Just like the pause we just did. What thoughts do I notice? What emotions are present? What's going on in my body? And take a look at that with curiosity. And even if it's difficult, like loneliness or sadness or something like that, which we normally would like to push away or ignore. And the thing is, we know that when we do that, it doesn't help. The more that we resist something, the more it persists. And especially with difficult emotions, if we try to stuff them or push them down, they just end up coming out in other ways. So the suggestion is to begin by recognizing, maybe labeling it. And then the next step of the A of RAIN is to see if you can allow it to be as it is. And again, even noticing the tendency to want to push it away or ignore it or stuff it, is even noticing that as you're noticing what's happening and how we relate to it. But see if you can just let it be as it is, without changing it, just in a non-judgmental way, just seeing what's present right here and now. The next step is the I, and that's simply to investigate your inner experience with kindness. So once we go through the recognize and allow, and even those first two steps can sometimes be all that's really needed. But, we have a tendency to want to try to figure things out. And so the investigation part of this is not to really analyze or figure it out, but it's more to look a little bit more closely at what's happening inside of us. And here is where we begin to perhaps get some insight. And as we ask ourselves what's happening inside of me, you might also ask yourself the question, what most wants attention? And perhaps it is something that brings up some loneliness or sadness or grief. Or you might even ask yourself, what am I believing about this particular circumstance or situation? Or what does this feeling want from me? And what we may come up with is realizing that what we need or want is some caring or compassion. And so we try to do this part of the exercise with kindness. So if we notice ourselves saying, well, we shouldn't be feeling that way, or we should be feeling a different way, or they shouldn't be, those kinds of things, if those kinds of messages are coming up, we want to remember we're trying to do this with kindness towards ourselves and others. That's really important, because we're not doing this to bring up the inner critic. Okay. So, oops. And then the last stage is that brings us to natural awareness. The N of RAIN isn't anything that you really have to do. It's something that naturally arises out of the R, A, and I, coming to our natural awareness. It also is a way to be nurturing to ourselves. So we might, in that exploration and investigation, realize that we need to soothe ourselves or give ourselves a break or do something that makes us feel relaxed or comfortable or something that nurtures ourselves. The non-identification part is that what this can help us do is it can help us realize that our reactions to all those things that are going on over the holidays are not necessarily who we are truly as a person. They're our natural, kind of reactions. They're the way that we think and feel about these things, but they're not our essence. And so we can learn to step back from them. We can see our thoughts and our emotions as kind of mental events that are not necessarily us. And so we can, kind of have a little bit of distance, a little bit of space from those things. And that can be very helpful. So that's rain. And rain can be very helpful with any of these things. As we cover these, I'm not going to go over these in detail, but there are so many sources of holiday stress, right? And just, we've got them listed here. And so you might pick one or two and you might say, well, these are the things that I want to try to work with. What we're going to do now, though, is we're going to do a meditation. And it's a great way to manage the stress. It's the same thing as the pausing, but it's pausing with intention to really sit and be quiet for a few moments. And in this meditation, I'm going to cover, I came across this on the app Insight Timer, and it's called Mindful Holidays with the 7 R's. So we're going to cover the 7 R's. It's reaching the present moment, recognizing, relaxing, reviewing our options, responding, and then returning, and then restarting. So let's see how that works and it plays out in the meditation. So finding a position that's comfortable and relatively balanced and upright so you can be alert, but also allowing the body to be in a position that's relaxed. And you can close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so and you feel safe to do so. If you want to keep them slightly open, that's okay too. And if you do that, just sort of keep your gaze down in front of you. And we just begin with the first R is to reach the present moment. To just simply notice where you are. And we can do this with simple body awareness. We can be aware of our body sitting wherever we are in the chair that we're in. We can be aware of the chair supporting us. Noticing our feet on the ground. Noticing the space around us. So being present through body awareness. The second R is to recognize, and this is being aware of ourselves and our body sensations. See if you can just scan the body and notice every little sensation that you're aware of without judging. Just noticing what's happening in the body right now. And then in the same way, noticing what emotions or feelings are present, pleasant or not. Perhaps some anxiety or fear or sadness or guilt. Perhaps some joy or happiness or excitement. Just simply let it be here as it is. We can also recognize thoughts about the holidays, observing our internal dialogue and the chatter that we have about it. Seeing if we can notice that without judging, with kind of an openness. Stepping back from those. Now the next R is to relax. Allowing the body to slow down, allowing the mind to slow down. And perhaps exploring for yourself what helps me relax, especially during these times. It might be music, holiday music, or taking care of ourselves with a bath or some exercise, or taking time out just simply for being aware of breathing. Whatever it is, relaxing the mind and the body. And whenever our attention wanders, just simply bringing it back to that relaxation. The next R is reviewing. Reviewing our options. What can I control? What can I change? Do I have a choice? Or do I need to accept things as they are? So just sitting with this for a moment, reviewing your options. Seeing if there's something that you can identify that you can control or change. What choice do you have? Or are there something that you need to accept? And then the fifth is to respond to those questions from your deepest self. What really matters to you over these holidays? See if you can stop fighting those expectations and emotions and whatever difficulties there are. And just be in touch with what matters so that you can respond in a way that's true to yourself. The sixth R is to return. So check in with yourself. Bring yourself to mindful awareness with openness and curiosity. Return to the body, sensations, your breath. Taking your time to simply feel the present moment. And then the seventh R is to restart. This is our transition. As we move on to our present activities, we take this new awareness with us, perhaps an open attitude to the next day or the next set of things that are on our plate, the next things that we have to do for the holiday season. And just bring this awareness with us. And perhaps making an intention to bring some of these R's with us. Relaxing, reviewing, responding, reaching the present moment, recognizing as we go through the holiday season. And so finishing the meditation, perhaps reconnecting with the body as it sits here, feeling the breath, and gently opening your eyes. And those are the 7 R's. You can use those anytime you feel a little stressed or overwhelmed. All right, so hope you found that helpful. I don't have that written out or anything at this point, but I will. This is being recorded, so if you want to return to that, you can. And we're just about out of time, but I want to take, I'll take another minute or two since we started a little bit late. Oh, there's a good question. It's from, yes, the question is, do I need to do a search in Insight Timer for the 7 R's? You know what? I think you could find it that way. I can tell you this, the author, the person who does it in Insight Timer, her name is, and you might have to write this down, I think it's an Italian name, Chiara, Chiara, Rossi, Rossi, Urtler, Urtler. And I think it's called Mindful Holidays with the 7 R's. So check that out. And again, I am recording this too, so it'll be on here. And before we close, I'll just kind of show you this. We'll do this next time. Vivian's doing next week, and I'll be doing the week after that. But I'll cover some information on boundaries, ways to take care of ourselves. Also cover some information on the challenges of other people and really trying to cultivate a better sense of mindful listening. And then, of course, we did this the last time, but just specifics on managing the stress. And we also did the perspective, so I won't go through that again. But I did come across this. This is different cartoons, so I thought this one was kind of funny. Christmas group therapy. Okay, take a look at this. I got a chuckle out of that one. And then the last is that I'll leave you with is on gratitude. We just came out of Thanksgiving, but gratitude is always something to keep, I think, ourselves remembering, instead of on the complaining line, as you see in this cartoon, that we should get in the gratitude line. But obviously focusing on those things that are working for us, that we are happy about, that we are grateful for, will do a lot for us as we go through the holiday season. So with that too, remember we do the take 10 phone meditations, and I think you both know about these. But any questions before we close? Yes, I will send out the recorded link. Good to have you aboard, Roberta and Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you. Hope you have a great rest of the day too. Thanks for being here.